I'm 77 years old, and if you look at the statistics, I say it because when you live long enough, you stop pretending. You have unlimited time. You start noticing mornings more. You start noticing silence more. You start noticing what drains you and what heals you. And almost every time I meet someone new or bump into an old acquaintance at the grocery store, they ask me the same question. They don't ask it like they're curious. They ask it like they're worried, like something is missing from my life. They lean in a little, lower their voice, and say, "Don't you want a boyfriend? Isn't the house too big for just one person? Wouldn't it be nice to have someone to share your morning coffee with?" Sometimes they tilt their head like they're looking at a stray animal in the rain. Sometimes they smile, but there's pity behind it, and I understand why they ask. We were trained to believe that being alone means being broken. We were taught that the ultimate goal is to be part of a pair. That if you're not paired up, you're not fully living. So 5 years ago, when I was 72, I listened to them. I tried to be normal. I tried to be what people wanted me to be. I opened the door. I let someone in. And I'm going to tell you the truth nobody wants to admit at dinner parties. I have never been more exhausted, more anxious, and more emotionally drained than I was when I was dating. Let me rewind. My husband passed away when I was 67. Cancer. It wasn't quick. It wasn't clean. It was hospitals. It was beeping machines. It was paperwork. It was watching someone you love become smaller every month. I remember holding his hand and trying not to squeeze too tight. I remember pretending to be strong so he wouldn't be scared. I remember the last week, how quiet the room felt even when people were talking. And when he finally let go, the silence in my house wasn't just silence. It was heavy. It had weight. It sat on the furniture. It sat on my chest. For the first year, I wasn't really living. I was surviving. I would sit in the same room and stare at the television without turning it on. Sometimes I'd make coffee and forget to drink it. Sometimes I'd walk into a room and forget why I was there. And the strangest part is, people think grief is only sadness. But grief is also confusion. It's also fatigue. It's also feeling like your identity has been ripped in half. I felt like half a person walking around in a full-sized house. But time does what it does. It doesn't erase love. It doesn't erase memories. But it softens the sharp edges. And slowly, I built a life again. I'm retired, and I like routine. Not because I'm boring. Because routine is stabilizing. Routine is safety. I started waking up early, around 5:30 in the morning. I'd make black coffee. I'd sit by the window, and I'd just watch the day begin. No talking, no news, no opinions. Just the quiet, and the light, and the sound of the world waking up. That quiet became my sanctuary. I started reading books I had delayed for decades. History books, biographies, old novels. I cleaned out drawers I hadn't opened in years. I fixed small things around the house that my husband used to fix. A squeaky hinge, a cabinet door, a loose step on the stairs. Little things, but they made me feel capable again. I took walks without explaining myself to anyone. I went to the library and didn't rush. I started cooking the simple meals I actually liked. And by the time I was 71, something surprised me. I wasn't thrilled. I wasn't skipping around the house, but I was steady. I had peace. And then I noticed something else. The world doesn't like an older woman alone. My family worried. Friends hinted. Neighbors suggested names. They said, humans need people. They said, you're isolating. They said, you'll regret being alone. And I know they meant well, but what they didn't understand is, I wasn't alone in the way they imagined. I had my routines. I had my memories. I had my projects. I had my calm. But when enough people treat your peace like a problem, you start doubting it. So I said yes. I met him. It started simple. Coffee. He was charming. He laughed easily. He listened. He asked questions. And I'm not going to lie to you. It felt nice. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not as someone's widow. Not as someone's mother or grandmother. As a woman. Second date. Third date. By month 4, everyone was calling it love. People told me, we're so happy for you. My family looked relieved, like they could finally stop worrying. Neighbors smiled like they'd solved the problem. And in the beginning, I was happy too. We went out to dinner. We tried new places. We took little drives. I put on nicer clothes. I wore lipstick again. It felt like a second youth. But then reality arrived. Merging two lives later in life isn't one big dramatic moment. It's 1,000 small moments, 1,000 tiny compromises. And the first thing that changed was my phone. Before him, my phone was a tool. It stayed on the counter. I used it for weather and appointments. With him, my phone became a leash. Good morning texts, check-ins. Where are you? What are you doing? Why didn't you reply? If I didn't answer fast enough, he called. Are you okay? You're quiet. Are you mad? Did I do something wrong? And at first, I thought it was sweet. I thought it meant he cared. But over time, it started feeling like I was being monitored. So I started carrying my phone everywhere, even during my quiet time. And every buzz did the same thing. My shoulders tightened. My chest tightened. My calm broke. I was living in low-level alertness, like I was on call. That's not romance. That's pressure. And then came the part younger people don't understand. At 72, energy is not unlimited. It's a battery, and it doesn't recharge like it used to. I protect my afternoons. I read. I rest my eyes. I take a small nap sometimes. Not because I'm lazy, because my body needs recovery. He didn't move like that. He wanted plans, trips, stores, people, noise. He wanted to make the most of the day. And when I said, I need a quiet day, he looked hurt. He said, come on, we don't have much time. We should be living. And I want you to hear this clearly. He didn't say it like a suggestion. He said it like a judgment. And suddenly I felt guilty for being tired, guilty for wanting stillness, guilty for being my age. So I started saying yes to things I didn't want, just to avoid being called boring. I wasn't living. I was performing. And performance is expensive. Then came the taboo part. Money. I worked hard. I saved carefully. I live with a plan. At this age, money isn't about luxury. It's about safety. It's about not becoming a burden. It's about having options if your health changes. It's about sleeping at night. My life alone was simple. I cooked at home. I spent modestly. I lived within my comfort zone. Dating was different. Restaurants, weekend trips, tickets, gas, gifts, and none of it feels expensive in one moment. It's $50 here, $100 there, a little trip, a little dinner, a little surprise. But after 6 months, I checked my account, and I felt fear. I was touching savings meant for my future. And when you're older, that fear is not dramatic. It's logical. I tried to talk about it calmly. I said, let's slow down. Let's cook at home. He said, you can't take it with you. He said, stop being so tight. But it wasn't about being cheap. It was about security. At 72, you don't start over. You don't grind harder. You don't magically create more time to earn. This is it. And now at night, my brain did math instead of sleeping. Inflation, emergencies, repairs, medical bills. That's the cost nobody talks about. Financial anxiety. And then came the breaking point. Around month 8, he started improving my home. He didn't like my furniture. He didn't like my routines. He didn't like my quiet. He moved things, added things, changed the feeling of my space. It was subtle at first. A new pillow here, a decoration there, a different smell in the room. And then one morning, around 6 a.m., my sacred hour, he was already up, clattering dishes, radio on, talking nonstop, plans, travel, people, noise, before I had even tasted my coffee. And I stood there holding my mug, and I felt something I didn't expect. I felt crowded. I felt like a guest in my own kitchen. And in that moment, I realized something sharp. In my effort not to be lonely, I had abandoned myself. I was living someone else's schedule. Spending money I didn't feel safe spending. Giving up silence I needed to breathe. He liked having a girlfriend. He liked company. But he didn't respect who I actually was. 2 days later, I ended it. It wasn't easy. There were tears. He said I'd regret it. He said I'd end up alone. Some people were disappointed. They said he was trying. They said, you're being too hard. They said, at your age, you should be grateful. But when his car left my driveway for the last time, I walked back into my house. I turned off the noise. I sat down, and the silence hit me like warm water. Relief. Real relief. Not excitement. Not adrenaline. Peace. That was 5 years ago. I'm 77 now. I haven't dated since, and I don't plan to. And now I want to tell you what I learned. Loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness is lack. Solitude is ownership. When I was dating, I was rarely alone. Yet I felt lonely because I couldn't hear my own thoughts. Now I'm alone most days, but I'm not lonely. I'm full of routine, full of calm, full of my own life. Second lesson, at this age, peace is currency, more valuable than excitement, more valuable than validation, more valuable than looking normal. When you invite someone in, you invite their habits, their noise, their expectations. When you're 30, you can absorb it. When you're 77, you've earned the right to calm. Third lesson, there is dignity in managing your own life. I wake up when I want. I eat what I want. I spend what feels safe. I protect my quiet. Yes, sometimes on holidays, I feel a small pang. Sometimes I see couples holding hands, and for a moment I wonder. But then I remember the price of admission. I remember the leash. I remember the pressure. I remember the guilt for wanting rest. I remember the anxiety. And I'm no longer willing to pay that price. So if you're listening, and people are pressuring you to get back out there, I'm giving you permission to stop. You are not a failure because you're single. You are not incomplete. If you meet someone who fits into your peace without destroying it, that's rare. That's beautiful. But don't tear your life apart just to avoid quiet. Quiet is not your enemy. Quiet is where you finally meet yourself. And at 77, I've realized something I never expected. I'm actually pretty good company. Don't let fear of dying alone force you to live in a way that makes you miserable. Reclaim your space. Reclaim your time. Reclaim your money. Reclaim your peace. Because peace is the one thing you get to keep until the very end. If this story hit you, subscribe and comment one word ... peace or partner.